You're listening to Sports Jam, recorded April 29th, 2012. Episode 35, Derrick Rose got pruned. Coming up on this week's episode of Sports Jam.
He is now on the worst possible place he could have gone. Jacksonville is by going to the black hole.
In my opinion, there is absolutely no place for what took place on that court and what he did. Absolutely no place in basketball for it.
This sounds like it's going to be fun. Gentlemen, let's start the show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Real Sports Jam, powered by Podomatic. Alongside Rob Steele and Vince O'Connor, I'm Chad Cetera. Our little buddy Stephen Peffer is on assignment today, and boy, is he going to miss a great show because leading it off, Derrick Rose out of the NBA playoffs with a torn ACL. Guys, this definitely has to put a damper on the Chicago Bulls and their opportunity to win the NBA championship.
Oh, I agree with that, Chad. I think that losing Derrick Rose, a cornerstone of your team, I think that, yeah, they may get by the first round undoubtedly against, Philadelphia, but after that it's up in the air. I don't think they win the East at all.
Look for Miami to take everything in the East now.
Yeah, and this actually does clear the path. But, when you think of Chicago, Derrick Rose missed 27 games this season in a shortened season, and the Bulls were 18-9. And when you got Luol Deng, Joakim Noah, Carlos Boozer, and the guy they picked up, Rip Hamilton, that helped them get to an 18-9 record while he was out, and the best record in the East, you still have to think Chicago is a cohesive unit to do some damage, but when you have to guard against a LeBron James and a Dwayne Wade and a Chris Bosh in a 7-game series, which ultimately that's where I think it's going to come down to in the East. Yeah, the chance of the Bulls is just, it is just gone away. There's nothing that the Bulls can do.
You think Chicago is going to be there in the finals against Miami?
Well, let's do this. Let's do the Pepper Reviews, a site dedicated to bring you reviews, news, and everything dealing with movies, TVs, music, video games, and books. It's pepperreviews.com. NBA playoff preview. Vince, let's go down all the matchups because, there's some good ones in there. Chicago, Philadelphia, even without Derrick Rose, in my opinion, the Bulls are going to win this thing. I'm going to say Philadelphia is going to steal one in Philly, but I've got the Bulls winning that series in 5.
No, I don't think they're going to steal one.
So
they're just not. They backed into the playoffs, in my opinion, and I just don't think they're going to steal a game. I think the Bulls, even without their number one, Derrick Rose, there's no way they're going to get a game here.
Miami and New York. Yeah, well, Miami and New York. If there was any series that I think could be a sweep, this is it. Watching Game 1 was embarrassing to New York fans. I think I saw a tweet on there that says, unless Schubert comes back from his injury and somehow miraculously recovers, and Jeremy Lin finds his way to recover from the beginning of the season heroics, the Knicks are done. And the performance they had in Game 1 was ridiculously poor. Miami, I've got them winning in 5, but there's the sweep. I think Miami takes that one in 4.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me if that was a sweep as well. Shumpert's out 6 to 8 months. He tore his ACL also, so that's 2 ACL tears in the NBA with two important cogs of teams. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's crazy.
I don't think the Knicks are going anywhere.
Now the matchups that I like in the East are Indiana and Orlando, the 3 and 6. Game 1, Orlando without Dwight Howard, and we won't see him in the playoffs. Pull a shocker 11-0 run to end the Game 1 and the victory in Indiana. I really don't see that they can maintain it and win the series. I think Indiana has too much. When you look at Roy Herbert, 7'2", who's going to guard him? Seriously? I think Indiana bounces back and takes that series in 6.
Yeah, well, just like you said, Chicago had a cohesive unit and they would make it to the finals. Orlando has a cohesive unit, too. There's been a lot of distractions there this year, a lot. And you know something? I agree Howard not being there is definitely a loss for them. But in all honesty, Chad, was he really playing? I mean, was he playing with his heart when he was there? Was he more of a detriment to the team as opposed to now they go into Indiana and win game one? I mean, I see them playing better without him, if you could say that, because of all the distractions. You don't agree?
I can agree with that. But
I agree with that.
But there's just too much. Indiana can shoot the ball on the outside, and it's very difficult for Orlando to recover against that. I honestly think an 11-0 run to end that game is a fluke, and I think Indiana, when you win 48 and only lose 24 in a season, I think that there's a reason why, and I think Indiana is good enough to beat Orlando and actually steal a game, maybe even two, in Orlando. That's why I've got them winning in 6.
Yeah, I think they're good enough. I just don't think they're going to do it. They shot 34% from the field. You call it first game jitters. You call it whatever you want. I think Orlando matches up very well with this Indiana team, and I'm looking for Orlando to win this in 5.
Wow. The matchup that I'm very confused at. Now explain this to me. Boston is the 4 seed. Atlanta's the 5 seed. But Atlanta has home court because they have a better record. Well, why the hell aren't the Atlanta Hawks the 4 seed and the Celtics the 5 seed? What sense does that make?
They've been watching the George Lucas Star Wars movies, which, as we all know, go 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and that is why the Hawks are the 4 seed, 5 seed, 8 seed. They're in the West, aren't they? With the Big 8 and the Pac-16 or whatever.
There's got to be logical explanation for this, Vince. I mean, come on. The NBA screws up a seeding, of all things.
Hey, I just don't know what to say. I really don't. It just makes no sense to me, so I just don't know what to say.
I mean, I really like this matchup, though. I mean, you think about Atlanta, and you think about Josh Smith. You think about Boston, you think about their big 3. I mentioned Josh Smith's name for Atlanta. When they play against Boston and Kevin Garnett's playing, one of the big 3 for the Celtics, Josh Smith shoots the ball horribly. And if Atlanta's going to get by Boston, they have to
Josh Smith, wait a minute. You said he shoots the ball horribly?
When he goes against Kevin Garnett in the last 2 matchups, he has shot the ball under 25% in both of those matchups.
Wow.
To me,
and that's for almost a 46% field goal percentage he has on the year. So I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about matchups, and when it comes to playoff time, and Kevin Garnett, when it comes to playoff time, boy can play some defense. I mean, he might be as old as you, but he can still play defense, and so can that whole Boston team. I really do not. I know. I try to be, but I can tell you this: I like Atlanta. They've had a great season, but they picked the wrong team to play against in the first round. I've got Boston winning this thing in 6.
I like Atlanta here. Joe Johnson's he's averaging almost 19 points a game. He's averaging 4 assists a game, rebounds. I like Atlanta's team because I think they play as a team, and I would look for them to also in 5 against Boston.
So basically, the matchups you've got Orlando versus Miami, then you've got Chicago and Atlanta. I've got Chicago against Boston, Indiana against Miami. I kind of held true to form there. Do you see Chicago and Miami in the conference finals, or do you have Miami and Atlanta?
I still see a Miami and Chicago finals. As much as I'd like for it not to be, I still see that, and I think the surprise team here could be Orlando.
And they could give Miami fits, definitely. About in the Western Conference, we talked about when the season began, we'll get this one right. San Antonio Spurs, the luxury of having a shortened season with their age and their experience. They pull off the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. They pull Utah as their first opponent. I'll tell you this, I don't even want to discuss this one. I've got San Antonio in 5 just because I'm too afraid to think that an 8 seed can at least win 1 game in that series.
I'm not going to disagree with you in this particular one. I really honestly don't think the 8 seed has a chance. I don't think the Jazz have a chance at winning a game here. I think San Antonio sweeps this series.
2-seed Thunder and the 7-seed Mavericks. Game 1, if that's any indication of how this Western Conference Final rematch is going to be, this is going to be what they call a diaper dandy. It's going to be 7 games back and forth. I've got Oklahoma City winning it, but it's going to take them every bit of 7 games, in my opinion. The home team's going to hold court in this one. Are they ready to take the next step? If they can't bid by Dallas, which they couldn't last year, then they're not. But I think they're going to squeak it in 7 games.
I think I think Oklahoma City, who was my favorite to win the whole NBA championship this year. I think they get out 4-1 here. I think they win the series 4-1. I think they win one in Dallas. Dallas will win one, and they come back home on the first week of May, and I think they take it in 5.
The thing that scares me most about betting against Dallas is Dirk Nowitzki. The boy's clutch. I mean, he showed it last year in the playoffs and in the finals. He's clutch. I don't think he's good enough to get him past the hump this year. The Lakers and Nuggets, Kobe Bryant still arguably the best player in the game. Come on. I know LeBron James stories, Kevin Durant stories. Kobe Bryant is now in the playoffs, and he's showing he's got a team around him. Look for the matchup against Denver to be a fun and exciting games. I've got the Lakers winning this one also in 7 because I think the Nuggets are good enough to give the Lakers a run, but the difference is Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, and he's going to be way too much. This is not even 7 games. There's no way this thing's going 7 games. 5 or 6 games, Lakers take this.
But they'll be missing Meta World Peace.
Good for him. I think he should be gone for the year.
I mean, here you go, guys. The guy throws a vicious elbow against James Harden of Oklahoma City. Obviously, he was suspended for 7 games. He's missed the last game of the regular season, first game of the playoffs. He could come back for Game 7 of that series, or could come back in a series against Oklahoma City. That would make for some fun television if those two match up. But like you said,
I just want to interrupt you 1 second. I would love to know what Stern was thinking when he did this. I mean, 7 games? Did anybody take a look at what that wasn't an inadvertent elbow. That was come down and just throw the elbow right in his head. That was not inadvertent. That should have got him at the very least, a suspension for the rest of the year. At the very least.
Later on in the show. Well, later on in the show, I have an opportunity to talk to Kevin Sylvester about something very similar in the NHL, where Rafi Torres took out Marian Hossa of the Chicago Blackhawks, and the NHL suspended Torres for 25 games. That guaranteed he'd miss the entire remainder of the NHL playoffs, even if they were to go 7 games in every series. I think David Stern dropped the ball on this one. It's the same kind of intent.
Chad, I ask you this question. The NHL is far more of a violent sport. Hockey is far more of a violent sport than basketball is. There is, in my opinion, there is absolutely no place for what took place on that court and what he did. Absolutely no place in basketball for it. I think a minimum he should have been gone for the rest of the year. That's my opinion.
And here's
Obviously,
the difference
my
between the
opinion
two.
doesn't count David Stern or anybody else, but that was like just a slap on the wrist for what he did. Now, what's going to stop him from doing it again? Hey, I only got 7
nothing.
games. Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing.
And it's not like he doesn't have a history of this stuff before.
He doesn't as world meta
peace. It fires
peace.
me up when I hear that. It really does. It fires me up that he got out that easily.
And the difference between the leagues are Brendan Shanahan is in charge of player penalties when it comes to NHL and all the hits. David Stern is in charge in the NBA. The difference is Shanahan is a former player, and he is not Gary Bettman. David Stern is the man in the NBA, and I think he's afraid of the recourse that the NBA owners will have on him. That's why Gary Bettman gave it to a former player.
So are you saying that Dennis Rodman should be in charge of handing out player penalties?
There's a little difference between Dennis Rodman and Brendan Shanahan. Dennis Rodman was never a captain of a team. He was never well respected by any players out there.
But he could kick the crap out of a cameraman.
Okay.
And he can drink
He
some
hardly
vodka, too.
I hear he can do that too. We could talk about this World Meta Peace thing forever until the world has Meta Peace, but we'll definitely be discussing him if the Lakers make it into the second round.
Yeah, the bottom line is David Stern's a joke. Period. End of story.
Memphis and the Clippers are the final series we're going to talk about. Memphis snuck into the 4 seed. We never thought we'd see that. Memphis jumped up from the 8 seed all the way up to number 4. And when you look at their matchup against the Clippers, it's a matter of who can win on the road. Both teams had sub-500 road records this year. I look for Memphis, who has Rudy Gay, who was not playing last year in the playoffs. They have a Zach Randolph, who's coming back. Although the Clippers have the highlight reel in Blake Griffin and CP3, I'm taking Memphis to win this one just because they have home court advantage, and they will take this one in 7.
Yeah, I think if you really look at these two teams, and I understand Memphis jumping up to the 4th seed and the Clippers being the 5th seed, but I personally think this is playoff time. This is where we got to get it together, guys, and I see the Clippers winning this in 7. They're going to have to steal one in Memphis, but I still see the Clippers winning this series in 7.
It's going to be a really good NBA first-round playoffs. Of course, as the playoffs go on, we're going to continue to cover it more here on the Real Sports Gym. Let's head over to the National Football League. The 2012 draft is in the books. Last week we had a great show. We previewed the entire first round. And, guys, looking at what we thought was going to happen and what actually did happen, nobody would have thought any of those picks would have fallen where they did. Especially the first pick that I thought was very questionable was pick 15, Seattle taking Bruce Irvin in the first round. Vince, did you fall out of your chair just like I did on that pick? Who's Bruce Irvin?
Yeah, I did too. I didn't understand it. When we did our mock drafts, I didn't even have him in the 3rd round. I think he pulled maybe a 3rd or a 4th round grade, maybe a low 2nd, but 15th pick? Seattle, what are you doing? That's a huge gamble, and we don't know if it'll pay off or not, but mark that one down. That we're going to have to keep an eye on that one through when the football season starts, because I think that's a huge gamble taking him at 15.
Some of the highlights of the NFL draft, 16 of the 32 first-round picks actually changed hands, and there were 19 total trades in that first round. The Patriots and Packers, 6 defensive players with their first 6 picks, and Stephen would be very proud. The SEC not only dominates in college football, but they also dominated the college football draft. 42 players taken out of the SEC, 8 from Alabama. They win the number of players drafted for the 6th consecutive year. It doesn't surprise me. The SEC is dominant, and they continue to dominate, and we're going to probably be talking about that for years to come.
Here's a little inside joke for you, Chad. There were so many trades in the NFL on draft day, I thought John was working for a couple of those teams.
Yes, for those of you that don't know, John is our buddy, plays in our myfantasyleague.com website, Fantasy Football League, makes a lot of trades, and yeah, what we were seeing, and a lot of the announcers compared the first round of the NFL draft to a Fantasy Football League draft. You expect the expected, which was Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III being taken 1-2. But then all of a sudden, hell broke loose, and the unexpected happened, and it started right there with pick 3. Trent Richardson goes to Cleveland because, the trade down by Minnesota, a great trade for the Vikings, in my opinion, because they still got the guy they wanted at the very next pick. What's some of the highlights you saw?
That just blew me away. Let's talk about that one for just a second. Why does Cleveland move up and give up what they gave up? What did they end up giving up? A 4th, a 6th, and a 7th just to move
Correct.
up one spot?
Yep. I mean,
Boy,
they think Richardson is going to be...
Minnesota played him big time, didn't they?
To get a guy they were likely going to get anyway?
Well,
yes,
exactly. But here's the thing, you think about what Cleveland's was thinking, and their thought process was, Tampa Bay wants Richardson. and they were probably calling Minnesota and say, hey, will you move down 2 spots? Because the likelihood is, and what we discussed with Doug Orth last week on the show was, Cleveland was not going to take Matt Khalil at number 4 if Minnesota didn't take them. So, that's the thought process was, okay, they have to get up to where they block Tampa Bay from making a move. So, I can understand what they did there, but what I can't understand Cleveland doing was their second first-round pick. We blasted Doug last week when he said, I think Brandon Weeden is going number 21 or whatever that pick was to Cleveland, their second first-round pick. We blasted him on that. And to draft a 28-year-old rookie as your future quarterback, come on, guys. I mean, Weeden in the first round, no. It's still, to me, Cleveland fans are excited. They have their quarterback of the future and their running back of the future. But, there's no way. No way. Weeden is going to prove to Cleveland fans that he's no Bernie Kosar. Oh, wait, never mind. He wasn't good either.
What are some of the things you liked about the first round? I know we had a lot of action in that first round of trades, but what are some of the picks that you liked? I'll tell you one that I really liked, and it wasn't even in the first round. It was in the second round. How did the New York Giants, the defending Super Bowl champions, get a wide receiver from LSU like Ruben Randall at the bottom of the second round?
That's a great pick.
No, he's a first-round quality guy, and they got him at the bottom of the second round. And people who needed wide receivers passed and passed. How about St. Louis Rams? Why would you pass on a receiver like that? Makes no sense.
They got what they targeted as their guy in the second round, which to me doesn't make any sense. But when you look at who they got, Brian Quick out of Appalachian State, they targeted him as their guy. And they probably wanted Justin Blackmon, but they traded out of that pick also they traded out of the 6th pick as soon as Jacksonville traded up to get Blackmon at 5, which right there, we're going to talk about that in a second. But they said Brian Quick was the guy, and that's, Ruben Randall to me is going to be a better quality in the system that he's going to be in. He replaces a Mario Manningham in New York, who was a very good possession receiver for Eli Manning. I think it's an upgrade, honestly. Ruben Randall, Mario Manningham. If you were to both come out of the draft, who would you rather have? I think the Giants end up getting the better of the 2 picks. The best draft, in my opinion, it's based on what the teams are and what they're all about. And to me, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. When you can get DeCastro in the first round and then Mike Adams falls to you all the way in the second round. And we discussed his off-field Mary Jane issues at Ohio State caused him to drop out of the first round. But when you can get 2 of the top offensive linemen for a team that is known for running the ball, I mean, really, Pittsburgh definitely made some headways, in my opinion. And then in the 6th round, they add Chris Rainey, the running back from Florida, who averages 6 yards a pop in the SEC. I mean, Pittsburgh, to me, they just prove why they are a factory, and they're just going to replenish. They're going to stay up there and make it difficult for everybody else.
Now that you've told us who your favorite team in the draft was, I want to stay right in that same division, and I'm going to go to the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't think a team in the whole entire draft did what they needed to do as big as they did it. They had an area of concern at cornerback. Who did they get? They got Dre Kirkpatrick, one of your Alabama guys and an SEC guy. Then they come back in the first round, and they get Kevin Zeitler. Huge pick. And they still weren't done. If you remember in my mock draft, I told you Devin Still was going to go in the first round. The Bengals got him in the second round.
At 21,
they got Brandon Thompson in the third round. And then they got Mohamed Sanu from Rutgers as well. They beefed up, and they got a tight end, Orson Charles, in the 4th round. They had the best draft, I think, of anybody. I think they had a better draft than the Pittsburgh Steelers did.
Oh, I mean, and it's going to be, a lot of people right now, it's really early to determine who had the best draft, who had the steals in the draft. I'm very excited about who the Buffalo Bills got, and everybody knows I'm a Bills fan, and to see the Bills get Stephon Gilmore, who you had going off at number 7, if I'm not mistaken, to Jacksonville in our mock draft, and then come off and get name gets me, Cordy Glenn, the versatile offensive lineman from Georgia. Buffalo helped their needs. They protect Ryan Fitzpatrick, and then you look at New England, same division. I hate what New England did, making 2 trades up for the first time in, I think, ever me watching a Bill Belichick draft for the Patriots, but they trade up to get Chandler Jones, who we thought would go to them at 27. They trade up to get Chandler Jones. They trade up to get Dante Hightower from Alabama. The New England Patriots made sense. What about the Jets in the same division?
But hold on before you go anywhere. The New England Patriots had to do that. Their defense was horrible.
31st.
And look what they did with those first 2 picks. Just pretty much what we said they were going to do is exactly what they do. They had to trade up to do it, but guess what? They made them instantly a better defensive unit.
Well, and I agree with that. And now, in that division, you look at everybody in this draft, and you can sit there and say, this team is better. This team's better.
You can go to the Jets, too. I'd like for you to talk about the Jets and their first-round pick, which was Quentin Copples.
I really, when I look at that, Quentin Copples to me does not fit the Jets system, especially when you have a player like Marvin Ingram, who was sitting on the board also, who seems to fit the defensive mold that Rex Ryan has in there. Quentin Copples, I had him in the top, but when you compare them and you really start breaking them down, which I started doing after our mock draft last week, I when it comes to fits. And to me, the fit of having Ingram over Copples, to me, was a better fit for the Jets. They pass on him. They take Copples.
I agree with you there. Absolutely agree with you there.
But I do like their second pick. Stephen Hill from Georgia Tech. This guy can spread the field. And for fantasy owners who are involved in the MyFantasyLeague.com websites and their fantasy football leagues, Stephen Hill could be a sleeper of a pick in a fantasy league. He gives the Jets an option to go downfield. He has Demaryius Thomas type hands and capabilities. And if anybody doesn't know who Demaryius Thomas is, go to the overtime game, the first play between Pittsburgh and Denver in the 2011-2012 NFL playoffs. He's the guy that caught the ball and took off and made Tim Tebow look like a superstar. Yeah, he's the man that did it.
He's 6'5", he's 206, and he runs a 4.3 40.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this guy could be the next Kelvin Johnson.
Why do you think St. Louis passed on him?
The last name Quick and wide receiver, it kind of.
And I know that Quick he's been compared to Terrell Owens, but I like Stephen Hill a little better, don't you?
Well, here's what I've learned about Jeff Fisher. You never know what you're going to get with Jeff Fisher, and his picks are questionable. Think about what he did in Tennessee as their head coach. He drafted Kevin Dyson in a draft that had Randy Moss. He passed on Randy Moss and took Kevin Dyson. Really? Who ends up having the better career? Then, in 2005, questionable call, he drafts Adam Pac-Man Jones. Okay, so you wonder why I say something like that? Janoris Jenkins falls right into the lap of Jeff Fisher and the St. Louis Rams. To me, it's a questionable pick. But if this guy pans out, and there's always the what if he pans out, can he pan out? Janoris Jenkins covered the likes of Julio Jones and A.J. Green when he played for Florida, shut them both down last year before he got into trouble in Florida and went to North Alabama. Jeff Fisher drafts based on his gut feeling. He fumbled on the receiver. I think he fumbled again, but he could have hit a home run in his defensive back. I think the Rams, if everything goes right on paper, the Rams actually could end up being pretty big here too, even though I question how many times they were going to trade down.
Yeah, well, my biggest bonehead pick of the whole entire draft, I don't know about you. Why would Jacksonville take a punter in the third round with all the defense they need? Why you tell me that general manager should be fired? I could do a better job sitting in his spot than what he did. A punter? Come on. You took a punter in the fourth round, what, a year ago, 2 years ago? Give me a break.
He takes him in the third round this year. But not only that,
I didn't even know punters got drafted.
Yeah.
They do get drafted.
He doesn't even follow football and doesn't think they get drafted.
I mean, this is, it was a third-round pick. I guess from what they're saying, this Brian Anger from Cal. Yeah, I'm not even going to waste my time studying on him because why do we want to care about a punter? I guess he's the next greatest punter of all time. Yay, excite me.
Well, you know what? Jacksonville finished 5-11.
Well, they're going to be doing it a lot anyway.
They finished 5-11 last year, and guess what? They were dead last in offense, and they were dead last in passing, and they take a punter. Gene Smith should be fired. He should be fired. How does he get a job being a general manager and make that decision to take a punter? It makes no sense to me when you have a 5-11 ball club.
Well, then he trades
Scrap the whole team and move him to L.A.
And you know what? At this rate, that might happen. And what they do, they traded up to get Justin Blackmon. And although I think Justin Blackmon could be a really good player, he is now on, my opinion, the worst possible place he could have gone in the top 10, and that's Jacksonville. It's like going to the black hole. Blaine Gabbert, okay, good luck throwing the ball to Justin Blackmon. You have no protection, and your defense is not going to let the other offense get off the field.
And you know this, Chad, being playing fantasy football for a long time, that could be a deterrent not to take him because he landed in Jacksonville. If he would have landed anywhere else, I'd have taken him. I don't know if I want him on Jacksonville.
Real quick before we get off this NFL beat, quarterbacks taken. Obviously, Andrew Luck was taken. Robert Griffin III was taken. Great. The two teams, the Colts and the Redskins, both take a quarterback. The fourth round comes around, and the Redskins take another quarterback, and the kid Cousins out of Michigan State. I don't understand the thought. And then, for the first time in NFL history, a quarterback goes number 1, and the quarterback goes number 253, Mr. Irrelevant. But wait a second, it's to the same team. The Colts take Chandler Harnish, who is now Mr. Irrelevant and will always be known as Mr. Irrelevant, from Northern Illinois, I guess to be the backup of Andrew Luck, which, what good is that going to do if he has the career that everybody anticipates him to have?
Week 3, Andrew Luck goes down with an injury because they play the Saints, and the Saints are going to have a bounty on him. So Mr. Irrelevant becomes the new main quarterback of Indianapolis, who goes 1-15 on the season.
Nice.
How's that?
I like your thinking.
Thank you.
Nice thinking. And speaking of former number 1 picks, Peyton Manning has a backup, 6'7" Arizona State quarterback Brock, not Lesnar, Osweiler, or however you want to pronounce his name, Mr. I'm going to sit on the bench for the next 5 years, because that's how long Manning's contract is. Denver selects him, great, but in the second round, really? This guy has basketball skills, but is his football skills going to pan out to be anything worth a flip?
He's 6'7", convert him to a receiver. Look at the size of that target running down the field.
There you go.
So, did the Broncos make the playoffs this year, Chad?
If Peyton Manning can stay healthy and all their pieces gel together, anything's possible. Denver definitely has a chance. They were 8-8 last year, made the playoffs, so why not this year?
Earlier this week, I believe you did talk to somebody else who was going on about playoffs, but different sport, I think, wasn't it?
Correct.
Let's go to the recording of you with the Buffalo Sabres announcer, Kevin Sylvester.
Hey, guys, I'm with Kevin Sylvester. He's the Buffalo Sabres TV network host on the Madison Square Garden Network. Kevin, thanks for joining Sports Jam today.
My pleasure to be here.
Hey, the first round of the 2012 Stanley Cup playoffs have come and gone. A lot of excitement, upsets, and old-time hockey in that Philly-Pittsburgh series. What will you remember the most about this first round?
Well, I think two things that come to mind. One, in the parity in the NHL that has been created by the salary cap and earlier free agency that has occurred. The playing field is more level. You had so many Game 7s in the Eastern Conference and teams on the verge of upsets of the top seed. Ottawa took New York to 7 games. The Rangers succeeded. The Capitals upset the Bruins in Game 7. So, that to me shows the parity in the system works as far as 11 play field, much like the NFL has the parity across the league. It doesn't take long to rebuild your team, and I think that's the case in the NHL. The second thing that stands out to me was, I guess, the nastiness of the first round with the hits and suspensions that had to be handed down. I don't think the nastiness is any different than in years past because those hits were there, the little spears and those sort of things, but it's being policed better. So that's why I guess it seems like there's more attention to it, but those things have always been around.
Before we move to the second round, you talked about the hits and nastiness, and a former Buffalo Sabre, well, I guess he was a part-time Buffalo Sabre, Ralphie Torres was the man of the hour in that first round with his hit against Hossa in Chicago for Phoenix. Do you think 25 games was justified for that hit, or do you think maybe the NHL went a little bit too far in Brendan Shanahan's suspension there?
Well, I think they made the right call on it. And for Ralphie Torres, he gets to be the example for the rest of the league. And, like the $2,500 fine, like Shea Weber got $2,500 fine. You're saying, well, what's $2,500? Kind of it gets you in the system, if you will, as an offender. So if you continue that behavior, you become a repeat offender, which Ralphie Torres is and is a repeat offender. So that allowed him to levy that suspension. That hit needs to be out of the game. It's a predatory hit. He is coming from across the ice with speed. The player is vulnerable. And, there's always the argument, all right, you got to keep your head up. But so what if he picked his head up and saw him coming? I mean, it's still a predatory hit, the guy coming all the way across the ice. Now, if it's his man and he hits him, that's one thing. But, he's out there headhunting. That's clearly what it was. And, in my opinion, and I think rightfully so. I mean, you think about it. To have a marquee player, which Marian Hossa is, and this guy's a top-flight player, to have him leave the ice on national TV on a stretcher, that's not good at all from a hit like that. So I think they were justified and right by throwing 25 games at him.
And Brendan Shanahan is not going to be afraid to throw those suspensions, as we're seeing with that and other things. Real quick,
I wouldn't want his job, by the way. I wouldn't want that.
No doubt.
Brendan Shanahan, I don't know what he's getting paid, but it's not enough. And I don't know him, but he looks older as the season's gone on. In those videos, he looks like a guy who's pretty tired right now and worn out.
But he defines the rules very clearly, and I think because he's a former player, a former Stanley Cup champion, I think the people and the players respect his decisions. And sorry for Ralphie Torres, but I think Shanahan, like you said, made the right decision.
Oh, for sure. And I don't think it was an easy one either. I think, with each case, he looks at it. I think, as someone who broadcasts in the league, the bad part about this is here's the tough part about these hits is every time there's a hit, you wonder. And when you're announcing a game, you wonder when you announce a big hit, was it a good hit? Is that being defined? Do I take this far? Did that guy get concussed on that big hit? So, to me, watching it and then having to describe what's going on, there's a challenge there now on these hits. So, I'm interested to see where we're at 2 years from now. Given this emphasis on it this year.
We're joined here on Sports Jam with Buffalo Sabres TV network host on Madison Square Garden Network, Mr. Kevin Sylvester. Kevin, let's run into the second round. And in the Eastern Conference, I know you're very familiar with the Eastern Conference, the number one seed New York Rangers, led by Henrik Lundqvist, who had a 1.7 goals against average and an amazing 94.5 save percentage in round one, battle what this year they're called the spoilers of the Eastern Conference, the Washington Capitals, and former league MVP Alex Ovechkin, who, taking a lot of shots, not getting him to hit the net. What do you see out of this series? It should be a dandy.
Well, I think it should be a good physical series. Just on paper, you mentioned Henrik Lundqvist, and he's going against Braden Holtby, who's played really well for the Washington Capitals. Surprised me, man. I saw him play for Hershey against the Rochester Americans a few months back, and he got lit up. And when he came to the Capitals, I'm like, they're resting on this guy. And he's been spectacular. Not the same guy I saw play in Hershey, that's for sure, which is one of the better teams in the American Hockey League. That being said, on paper, I would take Lundqvist over Holtby 7 days out of the week in a goaltending matchup. And I think that's what this is going to come down to, because both teams can play a defensive style. The Caps, if it would, my guess would be, would want to play a little bit more open against the New York Rangers, because the Rangers are such a good defensive team and can slow things down. And then they can go sometimes when they need to. I mean, they've got some offense there, particularly when you look at Richardson, Gaborik, and Callahan has done a nice job for him as their captain this year. But I think the Rangers have too much for them, depth-wise and defensively, for the Capitals to deal with. The Rangers' defense core is better than the Capitals' defense core. They certainly control things, and I think that, along with the goaltending, will be a difference in this series. I think it'll be tightly contested. As you go back to when we first started talking, the parity is there in the NHL, and many will say the first round is the most difficult round to get out of. And once you get out of there, then your matchups and strengths start to show even more, and I think that will be the case in this Rangers-Capitals series.
You saw the Capitals and the Bruins play in that first round, and Boston's a very physical team. They've got great defensemen. You think maybe that 7-game series against the Bruins could actually elevate the way the Capitals play and maybe even slightly tip the edge in their favor?
Well, I think the interesting thing is both teams went through 7 games, and I just think the Rangers have they have more talent, more savvy, if you will, than the Washington Capitals. The Caps, I don't want to discount them, because they showed me something in that series. I didn't think it was going to be much against the Boston Bruins, but they really showed some grit in that series, which will bode them well against the Rangers. But I just think in the end, I think the defense core for the New York Rangers is better than the defense core for the Washington Capitals, and the goaltender's better, and I think that'll be the difference.
In the other series, the Philadelphia Flyers against the number 6 seed New Jersey Devils, Philadelphia scored 30 goals in their 6 games against Pittsburgh and basically beat them down. But that being said, they also gave up 26 in that, including a 10-goal outburst by the Penguins in game number 4. Claude Giroux obviously is the man in Philadelphia. He had 14.6 goals, 8 assists. Against the New Jersey team that, when I think of New Jersey, the first thing I think of is 1994, Marty Brodeur against Dominic Hasek in a massive 4-overtime game against the Sabres in the playoffs in the Game 6. Martin Brodeur is still the goaltender for the New Jersey Devils. How has he lasted this long? And does he single-handedly, can he help the Devils make it to the conference finals?
Well, he certainly can. He is amazing. Let's say that. This guy it's incredible how he's been able to last in the league as long as he's going to be 40. And even though he's a professional goaltender and has the flexibility, going to be 40. I'm going to be 40 this year. There is some things that just don't feel the way they should, and I like to think I'm in decent shape. Obviously not as good a shape as Marty Brodeur is, but you look at him, you wouldn't think so. He looks like a 40-year-old who works out. He doesn't look like many other goaltenders who are extremely lean. He and Tim Thomas, the 2 goaltenders that got a little bit of cushion on them, if you will. Maybe that helps him out. He's not your, because he came up in the early 90s there, as you mentioned, and you remember 94, that game. Since he came up then, he's not your prototypical goaltender now who just automatically goes in the butterfly. He plays things differently, handles the puck well, knows when to push a play, knows when not to push a play. And if you're a skater on the Devils and you look back and you have Brodeur in that, how do you not feel confident with that guy back there? The guy's a Hall of Famer. So certainly he could do it. Now he's going to need a lot of help because Philadelphia comes at you in waves. They have certain exuberance. They have several lines that can score. They've certainly proven that. They got timely goaltending in that series from Ilya Bryzgalov. the question is which Golf is going to show up in that series against New Jersey, because New Jersey, they can trap, but they don't always do it. It's not the 90, the Devils from 95 or back then when they won the Cup, when they won 3 of their Cups. It's not just always a trapping team. They'll play that style, but they'll go. I mean, they will get the puck up the ice. You don't have Ilya Kovalchuk trap or Zach Parise trap. You want those guys to go. So they have some offensive firepower for sure. And to me, that makes it an interesting matchup because they can run and gun when needed too.
So we head over to the Western Conference, and we got similar styles. The number 2 seed St. Louis Blues against the team that I, in my opinion, never expected to win a single game, let alone the series, against the President Trophy champions, the Vancouver Canucks. But Jonathan Quick, we talk about goaltenders. We talked about Lundqvist, we talked about Prescala. Jonathan Quick for the Kings kept Vancouver's high-flying offense to only 8 goals in that 5-game series. Can he do it again against St. Louis? In a sense, though, same style kind of game. I'm thinking you're going to see a lot of 2-1, 1-0, 3-2 games in this series.
I think you're right with that. Yeah, the question with Quick, can he be as good as his counterparts at the other end for St. Louis? Halak, I know, has been injured, but you'd be able to throw Elliott in there, who's been outstanding for the Blues this season. I think this is going to be a great series. I think special teams will play a large role in this one, given with how stingy each team is. Ken Hitchcock is proven to be an excellent coach, given the talent that they had there in St. Louis. Some interesting, more so than the goaltender, is Mike Richards against David Backes. I mean, there you have 2 gritty centermen that play offense, but also are very good defensively. Backes nominated for the Selke. To me, that's an excellent matchup there. And the Blues also have, a couple of, veteran forwards on that team who've been through it. Arnott and Langenbrunner, those guys have been around to show these young guys what it takes to go on through. And then when you look at their defense core, a guy like Pietrangelo, who had high expectations when he's drafted, didn't live up to those immediately, but certainly now is an excellent defenseman. I think this series, I hope it goes 7 games because it should be a fantastic series. I hope I can stay up to watch it all, particularly those LA starts.
Exactly. We're joined here by Kevin Sylvester, host of the Sabres Network on Madison Square Garden Network. As I've told everybody on the show numerous of times, I am diehard Buffalo. It's great to have a Buffalo Sabres guy here on the show, and everybody knows I bleed and die Buffalo Sabres, Buffalo Bills, whatever it may be. But what people don't know is some of my roots actually came into Nashville, and then back in '98 when the Nashville Predators came into the NHL, and I got a chance to see this team grow and saw the ups and downs they've had. But they have one thing that's consistent, and that is a head coach named Barry Trotz. He's been there from day one, and what he's done for the second straight year is brought Nashville into the second round of the playoffs. And when you look at the series they're going to have against the 3 seed, the Phoenix Coyotes, I mean, in my opinion, you see Nashville, Shea Weber, you've got Ryan Suter, you've got, Pekka Rinne in net. You see a team that has all these players, and then in the trading deadline get a Paul Gostad from Buffalo. You think the Predators, it's to me, in the Western Conference, it's their series to lose. But, Kevin, you know a little bit about Phoenix. They've got to be able to throw something. They're in the second round of the playoffs.
Yeah, they're a nice story. The Phoenix Coyotes are. I mentioned how good of a coach Ken Hitchcock is. I think Dave Tippett is excellent. What he's been able to do with that team 2 years in a row to get them to the playoffs, and now to get that team to the second round of the playoffs, given all the distraction that's still there, the uncertainty that's still there, is, I think, incredible to keep the players focused. They've also done a nice job of bringing in some talent there and molding it, keeping Shane Doan when, they probably got called weekly about Doan. You're willing to trade your captain here. That guy is a magnificent player, power forward in the NHL and, leadership material. Anybody who's watched Man Tracker, I don't know if you watched that episode he and his brother were on where they beat the tracker and his partner on the horse and a foot. They were on feet. This guy was on a horse, and he was like winning a Stanley Cup. He said to do that. So and leading his brother through that was pretty cool to watch. But anyway, they also got guys like Radim Verbata, who's a player. Not many people know about, but dynamic offensively. They brought in a guy like Ray Whitney, helped Carolina win the Cup. I mean, this guy has great offensive ability, great creativity. So, they've got some players out there that are able to score some goals. Mike Smith is a goaltender who finally got his shot. I mean, he had opportunities in Tampa, had opportunities in Dallas, didn't work out. Showed some faith in him in Phoenix after Ilya Bryzgalov left via free agency. They lost a couple defensemen via free agency. Jovanovski's gone. McCulloch a couple of years ago went to Pittsburgh. So you're wondering, how's this team doing it? And somehow they came through. So it's really a nice story that they're able to make it the second round. Now, they're taking on Nashville, a team that actually picked to come out of the Western Conference because of those things you mentioned, because of their two stud defensemen there in Weber and Suter. Their goaltender, Pekka Rinne, is also nominated for the Vezina Trophy. I think he'll lose, though, to Henrik Lundqvist because Henrik plays in New York and had a phenomenal year. Not that Rinne didn't, but Lundqvist just had a phenomenal year to be number one in the Eastern Conference. But they also have a lot of grit up front. You'd say, all right, who's the big name that's going to score goals for the Predators, and you're like, is it Legwand? Yeah, but they brought in guys like Paul Gaustad, who's played a big role for them, particularly defensive zone faceoffs and on the penalty kill. They reunited the Kostitsin brothers, and that seemed to work out a little bit. And they got Radulov back from the KHL, so they're making a move and going for it this year because they do have some contracts coming up after the season. Weber's a restricted free agent. Suter's an unrestricted free agent. Maybe difficult to keep both defensemen there. And so they see it as their year. And I think the players all know this may be it where they have the best collection of players to go for the Stanley Cup.
All right, so before I get your Stanley Cup predictions, which I know I'm interested in hearing and I think everybody else is, let's talk about the beards. I know it is a tradition like no other, and one that NHL players seem to embrace. I mean, you get to mid-May, and you got some scruffy-looking guys flying across the ice. What do you know of the beard? Where did it come from? And why do you think it's such a tradition that is so strong in the hearts and the minds of the players?
Yeah, I forget which team originally did it and which players did it, but it was one of those things like, we're not shaving these things till we win the Cup, and the team won the Cup. I forgive me for not knowing which team it did. So it's just something that has been adopted by every team in the league, and the players that do it to keep the tradition going to win the Cup, and I think it's great. I mean, there's nothing better than seeing these players in June hoisting the Cup with, looking like Grizzly Adams out there, stuff where beards where they can save some food for later after they've, eaten lunch. There's some crumbs in there that they can get going. There's also some guys who can't grow one to save their life, but
we won't mention Shea Weber's name or anything.
Yeah, but there's also one of the great things about it is the league and many teams have started a thing called the Beardathon, where fans can take part and be sponsored. We've done it we're not doing it this year here in Buffalo because we make the playoffs, but previous years we've done it, and fans have taken part in it and been sponsored, raise money for charity, which is a cool thing. You can probably find it on YouTube. We actually filmed a commercial for it 2 years ago for the Beardathon, Sabres Beardathon, and it features Drew Stafford, Steve Monador, Raffi Torres when he was here in Buffalo, and myself sporting some funky beards for the promo. We got some theatrical stuff going. It was a lot of fun, and check it out, Sabres Beardathon. You can find it on YouTube. It's out there, and it's a lot of people commented on me. I think it was pretty funny. So there's something for your listeners to check out.
Absolutely, and now the most prestigious trophy in all of sports. I don't care what anybody says about the Vince Lombardi Trophy or the World Series or even what they call the NBA Trophy. Lord Stanley's Cup is the most prestigious cup in all of sports. Your prediction, who's going to be hoisting it in the 2011-2012 season?
Well, I like my odds now. I'm glad we talked here with the second round instead of the first round. Because if it was the first round, I'd tell you Pittsburgh was playing Nashville. But obviously Pittsburgh will not be playing Nashville. I'm going to stick with Nashville, my pick coming out of the Western Conference. And I think they'll take on the Philadelphia Flyers. I just like a lot of what Philly has going on there offensively, and just the spirit. That pains me, by the way, to say Philadelphia.
No doubt.
Coming out of the East. But that being said, I'll take Nashville to win the Cup. Good friend Pete Weber, who announces the Nashville games. I'd love to see him have a Cup with his team there, and love to see Nashville win it. I think it'd be phenomenal for the league. Although, when I made my picks on Twitter, a lot of Buffalo fans said, how would you pick Nashville to do it when Buffalo hasn't won a Cup yet? Well, I just look at which team I think is the best and can do it, and I think the Nashville Predators are that team.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, we appreciate you taking your time today and joining us here on The Real Sports Gym, and look forward to future conversations.
Yeah, my pleasure. Let's do it again.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of The Real Sports Jam. Be sure to friend us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Real Sports Jam, and follow us on Twitter at TRSportsJam, or even email us at TheRealSportsJam@gmail.com. We'd like to thank the Danny Nagy Band for our theme song, and invite you to listen to our next show, which will be online starting next Monday at noon. Until next week, you've been listening to The Real Sports Jam. We're out.